Fantastic. Great.
First of all, thank you very much for having us on this stage. And it's our pleasure always, every year, to be in this exhibition. It's really, I was talking to the team that if you compare this exhibition today and 6 years back, there's a big difference, like a big development. It's getting every year bigger and bigger, and we have more visitors coming to the exhibition, which is really good for us people producing paper in the Middle East. It's always a big challenge for us to produce paper. As I was telling to the team, in the middle of the desert, you get a paper. So it's really interesting, and every year we see different faces, which is good for us.
I think it's fantastic as the industry grows, obviously, to then be able to have an exhibition like this, where the organisers have put together some amazing speakers and panellists to share their expertise and their experience. It's fantastic for people here to have that on their back door, something they would not normally have. So it's very, very fortunate indeed. May I start, please, gentlemen, by asking you, Mr. Abdullah, to maybe just give us a little bit of background about yourself and your experience in the industry.
Yeah, as you know that I'm the managing director of Tehad Paper Mill. We are the biggest paper producer, which is uncoated wood-free in the Middle East. We are producing around 300,000 tons of paper. Also, I am the managing director of Crown Paper Mill, which is also, will come by 2 years, the biggest tissue manufacturer in jumbo reels, also in the Middle East. We will be reaching around 160,000 tons of tissue. They call me the paper guy because since I started my career in the paper industry, actually they were calling me before tissue guy, but today's paper guy is much better.
Do you feel that's elevated slightly, Mr. Abdullah?
Okay, so all my life in the paper industry, it's amazing. You see how the development of paper in the Gulf country and the Middle East, it's really amazing. I've been in that era of paper consumption increased almost to triple what it was 30 years back. I'm not that much old, but I have to mention this.
Thank you very much. I must say, you talked about going into tissues in the first instance. I mean, I've been in the Middle East for 30 years. I think this has got to be one of the biggest markets for tissues as such that I've ever come across. Am I right, or is that just my imagination?
It's the biggest.
Yeah.
See, tissue in the Arab world, or let me talk about the Middle East, that the growing of tissue consumption is more than 6 to 7% on a yearly basis.
Wow.
And of course, still we are far away from per capita when we compare ourselves to Europe or even to United States. The same thing on the printing and writing. We are still really far away from the consumption of paper per capita in the States, for example. People are saying, oh, the paper industry is dying. This is incorrect at all. Printing and writing still growing on the third world. The growth is around 3 to 4%. Of course, not like the tissue. Tissue can reach up to 7%. But if you compare the paper growth in Europe and States, no, there's no growth. But it's more stable, actually.
Fair enough.
But if you compare per capita between us and them, there's a huge gap.
Thank you. And I was going to ask Mr. Rishish, that was just a little aside. I was going to ask about that. So, Mr. Rishish, yes, please tell us a little bit about your background and your experience in the industry.
So, I've been with IPM since the startup of operations here, and since the subject matter is about innovation, I think the biggest innovation is finding the correct partners in terms of setting up an operation here, operating it, and then going about and selling it and making it a commercial success. And to add to the mix, having a paper mill, where there's no paper being produced, nobody in their wildest imagination ever imagined you could have a paper machine or people making paper here in the UAE. There's no water here, there's no forest cover here. But then when you start digging in deeper, it's not all that different from setting up any other operation. And the innovation lies in placing yourself in a geographical location, which makes it simple and easier for you to be closer to the market. So whilst we're looking at innovations in manufacturing, we also have tried to crack the market in making the engineering the market in order for us to be more innovative, and making our processes more dynamic to react in time to whatever the market situation is. If there's demand that's going up higher on certain grades, we are well suited for that. If there is certain products which are seasonal, we have enough capabilities to cater to those seasonalities as well, looking at regular business as well. So, that's the part of the cycle that we are looking at innovation in manufacturing to support whatever the market condition comes in and bring as close as possible to what the market demand is presently.
And I guess experience tells us that in many cases, the closer you are to your market, the more successful and the more responsive you can be in a short period of time. Is that right?
Right, that's right. So what happens is, if you look at the traditional model of manufacturing, you've got a manufacturing mindset which says, I'm going to make A, B, and C, and I'm going to make it at, the first of the month or the 15th of the month and the 20th of the month. So that gives you a very rigid framework that you're supposed to work in, because your manufacturing process itself does not support so much change in the process. With the investments that we've made in technology, and I think Mr. Abdullah would be talking about that in a bit, our dependence on technology and our utilization of technology helps us give unique solutions to the market, where we're not only able to predict what demand looks like in coming days, but we are also able to give feedback to our supply lines as well as to what is going to happen, say, in the next couple of weeks or the next couple of months. And putting all of that together with the systems that we have in place, especially around the manufacturing process, it also gives us enough time to plan for simple things like machine maintenance, taking, ensuring that the machine is capable to handle so many changes. So that's where, the innovation really comes in, and how you're able to deploy technology to make it simpler and more efficient. So that's basically how we've done that. Yeah.
Mr. Abdullah, I'd like to ask you, you've got decades of experience in the industry. Your company, I believe, is about 6 years old or so. So, what about if we look at the reputation in the paper manufacturing industry? How important is the company's reputation within the industry, and what steps can companies take really to establish and maintain a positive brand image? And we've talked a lot about branding in other sessions. What can they do to do that?
Of course, repetition is very important. And the most difficult thing that we are doing branding for a commodity. So at the end, we are selling a commodity. And how to brand this commodity is really a tough thing.
Absolutely.
So repetition is very important. So the first thing that we should do, or what we have done, is to have the right quality that the market requires. Okay? And we should maintain this quality for the client. So the repetition comes first from the quality, because the competition is there. We're having paper from all over the world. But the proximity being Abu Tihad Paper Mill in Abu Dhabi, so it's easy to reach to our area, which is in the Middle East. Okay? So how we can replace the others if we don't have the same quality that the market requires, and maintaining this quality. So quality of paper, I'm not saying it's a good quality or high, it's a quality that the customers is looking for. The second thing is the services. Okay, so it's easy to communicate with the client. It's easy to maintain the delivery on time. So all those issues is really making your repetition in the market. Third things come the prices. The price of material that you are selling should be also very competitive. It should not be higher than the market, or should be lower than the market. But of course, you have to take the advantage that you are in the market. So it's easy for our clients to deal with us to get the right price on the right time. So repetition is very, very important, either in the paper industry or in the tissue. And it's even more important in the tissue business, because at the end, we are selling a commodity.
Right. And I'll just like to add on to that. The typical ordering cycle that you look at within the GCC, when you did not have a manufacturing unit here, is you're booking orders in a certain month. So today we are in November. We are booking orders for imports for productions in December, shipments in December, and arrivals in either January end or February. So, there's a big opaqueness or opacity in the market to predict as to what the pricing is going to be in, say, January end or February, when we are sitting very well in November today. Now, and that's where the objective of having a manufacturing unit and a local manufacturing unit here is, whatever pricing that we are releasing into the market today, our customers are able to get the value out of that today. If I've invoiced those goods today and the goods have reached his warehouse tomorrow or day after tomorrow, that becomes his new price. So whatever inventory levels he's carrying with him would be adjusted accordingly to the pricing point of the last invoice that he has had to pay or he's booked onto his books, which actually is a very big advantage because it helps you stay current. You don't have to bet on markets. You don't have to carry a lot of inventory with you. And the real innovation, apart from engineering the market, making investments in technology, is also financial innovation. You look at the number of inventory turnovers that have happened with people who have partnered with us. Previously, you had stock turnovers of about 3 per year. Today, we've come up to about 8 or 9 turnovers, rotations in the inventory in a financial year. So anybody who's got an investment of, say, about $3 or $4 million previously could do business for 4 into 3 is $12 million. Today, that is multiplied to more than 2 or 3 times of that. And we have examples of that very well within and people who are participating here in the exhibition as well. So that also is an innovation that has been realized in the market. It's just that nobody really thought about this sort of innovation. It only happened once we started thinking about the project and we implemented the project, and people, once they started doing business with us, they started realizing that, hey, it's not just about profitability per ton. It's also about how much business you're able to do in a year.
Of course. And I think
Right?
that links back to what Mr. Abdullah was saying initially about the growth in the market and the fact that being so close and proximity-wise, you can actually service your customers. And I think the other message that came through from you, Mr. Abdullah, was about consistency. Overall, you talk about quality and you talk about pricing. Is the pricing, you touched on it, Mr. Ritesh, is the pricing subject to fluctuations that make the market difficult to deal with? Are there great fluctuations there? You were talking about it.
Right. So pricing is a very complex term. It's not just one term, which is what's the price today. Pricing has got implications around what kind of inventory somebody is carrying. So is he looking at a better price to average out his inventory? Pricing is also determined by what your supply chain problems are, what are your logistical challenges, plus what is the general market condition in terms of there are people who are opportunistic at times and who try to game others. Now, the market is not determined by one person, 2 people or 3 people, right? It's multiple guys. So there are times where you've got some guys who don't order just to see maybe pricing is going to stop, who's going to break first, who's going to, try to bring it down. And then suddenly they find that, hey, I'm getting a lot of more jobs in a certain grade.
Yeah.
And then it drives it up. So looking and something like this is what we call as fuzzy logic. It's only possible through having complex algorithms looking at specifically what the demand drivers are. At our end, we're looking at how we can look at those trends and take it back to our manufacturing setup and ensure that we manufacture, using this feedback, how can we meet these demands from the market in the most efficient manner?
Mr. Abdullah, I'd like to come back to you. You were talking about consistency. In your view, what does excellence mean in the context of paper manufacturing? You were stressing on the fact that it's quality for the market, but is there a benchmark, a standard of excellence in the context of paper manufacturing? And are there specific benchmarks or principles that set industry leaders apart?
Definitely, we are not the leaders in this market and in the paper industry. We came to a market was flooded with a lot of kind of papers, and there were leaders in the market. I'm talking about the Middle East. I will not mention names because they are my competitors today, but of course they were our benchmark. So we have to target this quality and we have to be within this range. So actually in the paper industry, either will be category A or category B. Say A is the elite of the paper producer, B is a commercial fighting brands that we don't want to be there. So from day one, we decided that we want to be in that category. We want to be in A level, competing with the big names in the market. Not because we want to kick them off from the market, but we found out that if we are not there, it will be very much difficult for us to compete in grade B or category B. So this is from day one, was our strategy. Even when we have selected the machine from day one, we didn't go for any suppliers. Everything that we have selected, it was one of the best machines in the world. Today, we are so proud in Ittihad Paper Mill. We have one of the best machine in the world producing paper. As from, I could say the supplier, it's Valmet. It's a well-known company supplying. Even when it comes to the sheeting plant, also we selected the best sheeters producers in the world. Why? Because we decided to be in that category. So if you want to compete with big names, then you should be with the big players. So this is why it was very important for us from day one to select the right machine, to have the best paper plus the most economical paper that to be produced.
It's a very fine balance, I assume, to have. If you want to produce a good quality product, you have to make that investment
Exactly.
in the top machinery and supplies. The question of what you put in is what comes out.
Otherwise, that elite or category A, the number of players are limited. If you go lower, then you have a huge number of players there. So we don't want to be, we are playing only with the big boys.
Sorry, did you want to add something to that?
Right. So, just adding on to what Mr. Abdullah said is, we've got, the A grade competition, and, definition of excellence is whether how much are you able to get in customer satisfaction, right? And pricing does play a big part of it. Now, on the lighter side of things, nobody's ever happy with the prices. Everybody wants to buy cheap, right? That's the logic behind it. But then, what really defines, and what we've understood as what defines excellence is if you give out the correct message at the correct time, and you give in consistency with what you are delivering. Over time, it leads to excellence. So that's basically the ladder. So you set up something, you keep communicating about it, in terms of having good services, meeting their requirements within the time frames that have been promised, and then you do it consistently. Over time, it becomes a benchmark for excellence.
It becomes the norm.
Yeah, it becomes the norm. And that's where you know that you have an excellent service, because you have returning customers, you have healthy top lines, you have healthy bottom lines, regardless of whether the market is up or the market is down. The sales team is happy, the production team is happy, the shareholders are happy. That's what you define as you're doing something excellent.
Quite a challenge. Mr. Abdullah, just building on that, are there any core values or principles, for instance, that your company, Etihad Paper Mills, uphold to maintain these standards of excellence? And just building on that, how do these values guide your management decision-making and your daily operations as well?
See, first thing that we are very committed to the community. So we have to do things that really taking the advantage of being in UAE. So the values that we have it, that we are one of the mills that using the resources in from UAE itself. So that in the paper industry, the printing and writing, we use calcium carbonate. Okay. So yes, we are using virgin pulp, which comes from all over the world. Then we are using calcium carbonate. This calcium carbonate is from United Arab Emirates. So I talk about like 25% of the raw material comes from United Arab Emirates, and which is good for the country that we are using those resources. And by the way, it's a very high quality of calcium carbonate. So the value that we want to add value to the economy of United Arab Emirates. Okay. So for us, we are one of the biggest, how we call it, companies that using Khalifa board in Abu Dhabi. Because of Etihad Paper Mill, Abu Dhabi became as a hub for the pulp trading.
I see.
Because we are the biggest buyer of pulp in the Middle East. We are buying around 400,000 tons of pulp on a yearly basis. So now Abu Dhabi became more known as a hub of the pulp and paper industry. So those values have been added to UAE because of Etihad Paper Mill. So we are now Khalifa board using a lot of containers coming in, coming out, going out. Pulp people start looking at Abu Dhabi as a hub for the pulp industry or pulp trading. So we add value to the economy of UAE. Plus, the other thing that we have, and also we are using raw material from UAE. And this is why we are able to be more competitive than our competitors. Of course, also as a group, as a Etihad Investment Group, we are start applying the ESG. So those values, okay, it's like for the environmental things, for the social things, for the people of our companies. So there are a lot of values we added to our group. And being awarded yesterday that what's the certificate? Great place to work. A great place to work.
Oh,
We got
fantastic.
yes,
Congratulations.
I was not know that yesterday. I know it that we got this certification. So there are a lot of values. And there is. I will tell you that we are very emotional when it comes to the paper industry. We love this industry. Our group is growing tremendously in this industry. So I think that the presence of Etihad Paper Mill in Abu Dhabi changed the map of the world when it comes to the paper industry. I'm proud to say that, honestly.
Well, it's an outstanding reputation, obviously, that you have, and very commendable that you're able to then grow the local economy and the local community, buying local, and make sure that it's developing
Yes, definitely.
the economy
Yes,
within the country, really.
exactly.
Mr. Ritesh, let's have a look at production technologies. Let's move on a little bit and talk about that. So, what advancements in production technology? What specific innovations have you integrated into Etihad Paper Mill to enhance basically efficiency and quality in paper manufacturing?
Right. You see, to carry on from a point that Mr. Abdullah made is we have the best-in-class machines today, right? It comes with the best-in-class management software on the machine. But, machine is basically going to make what you ask it to make. How do you tell the machine what you're making is right or what you're making is wrong? And if you look at paper traditionally, between the time that paper is manufactured on the machine versus when you give feedback to the machine, that cycle typically used to take 6 to 8 hours. So you
say whether it's met the production, whether it's met your standards or whether it's substandard.
Right. Traditionally, that's how it is.
6 hours.
Some machine of some manufacturers do it in 2 hours. For us, it's online. The moment
Elaborate on that. What do you mean it's online?
It's online is we've invested heavily in sensors. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Mamun, we've got like what 5,000 sensors placed all across the machine, which are calibrated regularly against an offline system to see that whether those sensors are actually reading correct and whether those readings corroborate with a standalone system.
It's all happening in real time.
This all happens in real time.
Okay.
And these records are kept for, I don't know, maybe 15 years, 20 years down the road. So that because some of the papers that we make carry the ISO 9706 certification on it. So it gives you a 100-year guarantee for print on it. So we are technically, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it carries that with it. You can print something on that grade of paper and you can keep it for the next 100 years. So when we are giving that guarantee and qualifying our product to carry that certificate with it, we need to have records for it. We cannot just say, hey, 100 years, and then after 10 years, if somebody wants to come back to it and something's vanished from it.
But you have obviously all the backup and
right. So we've got everything on this one to prove that when the paper was manufactured, at the time of delivery and at the time of printing, it met certain parameters. And if the paper thereafter has not been stored properly, then the onus of that responsibility has passed on to the person who's using the paper and consuming the paper. So we have those systems in place. So there have been times where, you've got the paper running on the paper machine. It's still in the jumbo roll stage. And, there are rejections that come in. And once it's rejected, obviously the human tendency is to go and take some samples from it and see, and it always corroborates with what the machine is saying.
Fair enough.
Right. And what it does is, so we've got a mechanism where we take those samples, put it onto the standalone system, feed that data in, and nobody's going to go and turn a knob or nobody's going to go and do some programming change. The machine already knows where the problem is and it's going to go and rectify itself over there.
So are you eliminating that element of human dependency on checking?
See, at the end of the day, there's always a human behind the machine. It's not the machine, it's the man behind the machine that counts. So those guys are trained. Our guys are trained to ensure that whatever changes are coming in, they are accurate, and whatever changes are being recommended are actually being implemented on the paper machine in the correct spot.
That's a fascinating example, actually. So very, very.
For us, for me in sales, typically if I have a problem, I've got customers here. We don't have problems in quality. We've We've never really had,
Touch wood.
we don't have quality problems. And if somebody comes up to us and tells us, hey, your paper is jamming, well, the standard response that me and my sales team or anybody in the company is like, maybe something's wrong with your printer.
It's not our problem, it's your problem.
Yeah, I mean, we go and ask them, when was your printer service last time? When did you change the rollers? When were the finger, feeders changed for that? So,
Show me anybody that doesn't have a problem with their printer in this room.
so yeah, I mean, that's what builds in confidence in going about and selling a product, and that's what the confidence our customers place on us as well, because it enables them to sell and to consume.
And it has to make your job as a salesperson, you're much more confident and much more positive because you know what's behind your product.
Exactly. That's and even our partners, have come to believe that. IPM paper is going to run. I mean, if you probably have to make some changes on your machine to see if there's something wrong with the machine to make it work.
And Mr. Abdullah, I'd like to come to you. One of the subjects, there are some key topics that come up over and over again, and we've had several panels here and speakers. We talk about AI, we talk about technology, we talk about, obviously, sustainability as well. So, we talked in the area of corporate gifting about eco-friendly and sustainable gifting. But sort of in the industry here, most consumers are demanding eco-friendly and sustainable paper products as well. So Etihad Paper Mill, how are you actually adapting your product line to meet these consumer expectations?
Which way we are maintaining which expectation you are?
With consumers demanding more eco-friendly and sustainable paper products.
As I said, that from day one, when we have selected the machine, we try to select the machine that using the most effective water resources and gas resources and electricity. Okay. Because the cost per ton for us, it's competitive to other mills in the world. So we are one of the companies that using one of the lowest consumption of water, what is very important in the paper industry.
And in the deserts.
I was going to say it's very important here as well.
Yeah. So phase one was like, we did it phase one. Now we are doing phase two to reduce even more the consumption of fresh water. So whatever we have selected from day one, that we build this machine to minimize the cost in a way that to save the energy, water, and other things in the world. So this is how we built up this machine. And when he was talking about automation and AI, it was really important from day one that when we selected this machine, we are applying the softwares, the AI, the robot that we are using to reduce the interference of the human bodies in order to minimize the mistakes, to minimize the loss of energy. So this is how we are. And we have a lot of plans for the future. From our R&D department, that how we can be more economical, more environmental friendly, how we can minimize the waste that comes from the machine. This is all things are very important to us in order to be more friendly, more economical, high quality paper. So all those together works together. It doesn't come in a day. We've been working on those things for the last 4 or 5 years. So this is how we are working to be more effective paper producers in the Middle East.
And I can see clearly how you've explained that applies to your production and your machinery as well that you use at Etihad Paper Mills. Mr. Ishish, what about your actual product line? Where are your eco-friendly products and sustainable products? Do you have a product offering that addresses those consumer requirements as far as the end user is concerned?
Right. So, you see, when you look at eco-friendly and sustainability, they sound like they are, tag words. There's something with the hashtag sustainable, hashtag it is eco-friendly. The way we look at it is paper is eco-friendly to begin with. It's one of the only renewable resources you have, because once you take oil out, for example, from the ground up, you burn it or you convert it into polyester. It stays in the atmosphere for at least 150 to 200 years. or you burn it and it becomes carbon dioxide, which stays in the atmosphere for you know how long. If you look at paper, paper can be recycled at least or at most 7 times. You will only get recycled paper once you have fresh paper in the market. So if you don't have fresh or virgin fibers coming into the market, your recycled market will come to zero within 6 months.
I see. Gosh, that's
So
quite
having
really
having to produce virgin paper actually feeds recycled paper, because recycled paper comes from
has
paper.
to come from somewhere.
It has to come from somewhere. So we are doing that now. How are we responsible in that? The only way is everybody can talk. Yeah, we are sustainable. We are eco-friendly. We have multiple certificates, and which we get by audits conducted by third parties, and that are standard from across all across all geographies, to prove that you get a grading for sustainability. So a bare minimum is to have, say, an FSC certificate, or to say that you are buying your fibers from pulp manufacturers that are responsible or participating in responsible forestry. The other part of it is the eco label, which, you have the EU eco label, you've got the Nordic eco label. All of them measure different aspects, but the core of that is what are the emissions that come out of an operation, not just manufacturing, but also tertiary operations, and what percent of business are you doing locally.
And as a company over here manufacturing within the UAE, you don't just service the UAE market. You are global, so you go into other markets as well.
UAE is, we look at GCC as our extended market. It's
Right.
the home market for us. But we are selling product into the US, and we are more eco-friendly than most US manufacturers. We can say that.
So from that background, if there are companies looking to expand globally, what might be some of the strategies that would help ensure success in those foreign markets? And are there perhaps regions or markets where certain strategies have been more effective than others?
I think because I've been in the industry across multiple manufacturers, you need to imbibe sustainability. You cannot just stand up and say, hey, I'm going to be sustainable today, or I'm going to be sustainable in 2025 or in 2028. Sustainability starts at the time of when the idea is seeded, that, I want to do business, because you want to make it sustainable not only environmentally, but also financially. And with the regulatory frameworks that are coming across across all countries, there are financial implications, and heavy financial implications, if you're not sustainable. So it has to start at the time when you are setting up a project, or you have an idea of setting up a project. That is supposed to be at that time. It cannot be, we are no longer in the world where we can say, hey, I'm going to be sustainable tomorrow, or I'll think about sustainability once I'm profitable.
And if we set sustainability perhaps to one side, any other strategies for success as far as entering global markets that you might like to share with some of our audience?
Like the customer requirements in the US are quite different to those in Europe, for example. And you need to spend time with them to understand what's the core driver for that specific need. Once we get to that, because we have arguments, multiple discussions as to why a certain thing is needed. Obviously, it costs money to get in certifications, but once it's clear that without this certificate, we lose X amount of business, we go ahead and make that investment in those certificates. So it's very important to understand that it's not a one-time thing. You'll have to have multiple audits. You'll have to have multiple, people come and tell you that, hey, these guys are okay, for people to come up and have confidence in your sustainability scores. Because there are times where you get good scores in one aspect and, really horrible in the others. So that's where the confusion comes up. But when you consistently get a good score or a consistently bad score, you know where you stand. And then your customers know how to gauge you and how to deal with you. And eventually, your price reflects how sustainable you are or how good your credentials are. If you have excellent credentials, you'll be able to get a premium.
And how would that apply to either of you gentlemen? How would that apply to packaging? for instance, is Etihad Paper Mill also innovating in the area of sustainable packaging as well? Is that different? Or are there any specific, following on from that, any specific trends perhaps in the UAE and global markets that you're quite positive or excited about?
See, one of the things we have to sell paper that's eventually usable. So as much as we want to go ahead and bash plastic, we have to use a certain amount of not plastic as plastic, but as BOPP or as PE in some of our packaging material, because paper absorbs a lot of moisture. So in order to get a moisture barrier, we have to use some amount of plastic. Now, that's point one. The second thing I was saying is our cartons are from recycled paper, which, for sure are coming out of manufacturers in the UAE, especially the craft liners. The top liners probably coming out of India or Indonesia or China. So that's our bit for it. We are getting a lot of interest in terms of having biodegradable plastic packaging with the certain grades, and that's what we are working with our local suppliers here to ensure that we are able to have the correct certificate to go with, going ahead and promising our customers that, hey, we now have an eco-friendly solution,
Sure.
which is biodegradable plastic, which is to add on to the other credentials. We are exploring that right now, but with our local suppliers here, and that's because we want to develop this locally as well. It is available in Europe, it's available in China, but we are waiting for it to have it locally, so that in the overall scheme of things, if you're looking at sustainability alone, if you're able to get this product from UAE, we score better than importing it from outside.
So just before I come back to you, Mr. Abdul, I'd just like to wrap up this part of the discussion, because I'm going to ask you about some of your future visions and ask you to look into the future. But just before we do that, you've talked a lot about the high-tech, state-of-the-art equipment that you have for producing the paper, and then balancing that obviously with sustainability. So how do you manage, adopting cutting-edge technology really, with the need to stay competitive in the market? Is it a very fine balance, or how do you manage that?
You or for him?
Either of you, Rishish, by all means.
For you, sir.
See, as I said, that we have to work on a balance. At the end, we are selling paper. We want to make money out of it. And the competition is not easy in the market. We're having people coming from all over the world, so we are competing globally. But again, when you start using technology, when you start to be more consistent in the quality that you are producing, so you need a fine machine that can produce this kind of paper at a very good quality, at a very good price, and competing with all the others. So technology is really important. So as I said, from day one, when we selected the machine, this was our target, that we have to select a machine can produce paper that can put us on the paper world map. So it was very important for us from day one.
And Mr. Dil, I'm going to ask you to get out your crystal ball and look into the future for us.
I wish I could do that.
So the future of paper is certainly not dead. But what is your vision for the future of paper manufacturing? Where is that industry going? And are there specific things, trends, technologies, practices that you think will shape the future of this industry in the next decade or so?
To be honest with you, the biggest challenge for us is China. Okay? The problem that China recently invested a lot in the paper industry, like a huge machine coming to China. Okay? And if the Chinese market is doing well, everybody's happy. Okay? But when they start having problem in China, then they start throwing papers everywhere. Okay, this is the challenges that we are seeing in the future. China is a big country. They don't invest in a small machines.
No.
So when they go for machines, then you get millions of tons of paper.
Big.
Okay. The problem with the market is good, fine. But when they have issues, then we start having a lot of problems. So this is the only concern for us for the future. Rather than that, the market is good. It's growing. It's very stable. Being as Ittihad in this area put us on the map. Everybody comes to us. So we are selling almost 27,000 ton on a monthly base. Yani it's Ittihad Paper Mill started 2020 and now we are 2024. We sold till today more than 1.3 or yeah, 1,300,000 ton of paper.
Wow.
Within this 4 years, which is, yes, wow. Nobody believed that we could do it
Unbelievable, yeah.
and within 4 years. So I'm still optimistic, but again, it depends on China. That everybody from our side praying that China doesn't get sick.
Mr. Abdul, I think with that positive outlook, it sounds like you'll be in the paper business for at least another 30 years by the
Oh,
sounds
no,
of
it's
it.
actually 5 years. Yeah.
Would you
I
like
mean,
to add any? Sorry, carry on.
yeah, I've been in this business since 1990. So you're talking about 34 years in this business. But all kind of paper, not only the printing and writing. I was in brown paper, tissue, printing and writing.
Fantastic. Mr. Rishish, anything that you'd like to add
Right.
to that as far as
I think
future goes?
we're looking at printing and writing as a segment. Printing and writing, everyone says, yeah, it's either flat or it's marginally growing or it's it's coming down. This is assuming there are a lot of assumptions around this, that adoption of technology is more and is going to increase. However, with the adoption of technology, you have a lot of risks that come in, and risks, not only financial risk, but people or children not being able to write, or children not being able to read textbooks or anything else which has anything to do with something you can carry and not rely on electricity or batteries. So you are going to see a revival of demand, and it's not going to be as big as what it was, say, 30 years before or 20 years before, but you're going to see a return to people coming down again into writing and starting to use paper for what paper was actually, for what we invented paper, which is as a record of information, and more importantly, even into other elements such as packaging or communications. So what's happening today is, and this is an interesting trend that we've noticed, is you've got, whenever you're printing out banners or leaflets, previously you used to have one design of leaflets and that goes off to, say, 1 million people, right? Everybody gets the same message. Today, generation 2 of communication was, you have one message that goes across to everyone on emails and everybody puts it in their spam folder.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Gen 3 in communications is, you're getting targeted ads. So, just as we are talking,
Yeah.
you might, I don't know, let's talk about envelopes, for example. You might end up seeing an ad for envelopes on Instagram or any of the other social media sites. Now, where paper and communication using paper comes into Gen 4 or stage 4 is, you will have companies reinforcing that message by sending you something through mail. So if you've spoken about, buying a high-ticket item, you might have companies who could send you a brochure for that specific product just to reinforce a message. And chances are that you would look at that and go ahead with the buying of that high-ticket item because somebody took the effort to come up to you and reached out to you amongst everyone else. So that's where you're getting it. So your communications are coming in from mass communications to targeted communications. And to have targeted communications, you're not going to have long runs. You're going to have short runs.
Fair enough.
And you need to be fast. Within a day or within hours, you need to print it out and ship it out. And that's where the paper has to perform to it. So you're going to see that paper coming in very, very shortly. These runs are getting shorter and shorter, and you'll see a lot of these campaigns coming in forward.
Fair enough. I'm conscious that people want to ask some questions, so I'm going to end with one question for both of you. If you had some advice or some top tips or whatever for someone who was wanting to either enter the paper industry or make meaningful change within the paper manufacturing industry, what would your thoughts be that you might like to share from your wealth of experience?
It's a tough question, actually. See, again, the best thing is to see what's the market needs. This is for me. And for us from our side, that you have to work closely to your client, because sometimes you come up with a product that you feel you see after that the market start requiring this product. So just feel what the market requires. Don't copy the others. Okay, this is the problem with the Middle East. If someone are successful in this business, everybody start copying him and doing the same. It doesn't work every time. So you have to sense what's the market's needs. You have to sense what's the future's going on. Sometimes if you work with your client, you come with a new product, with a new ideas. So this is my advice. Don't copy the others. You might succeed, you might not.
Yep.
Final word.
No, no.
The word to you, Mr. Aziz.
I haven't reached his level of that yet. But to be a little bit cheeky, I'd say if you want success, be associated with IPM.
And that's a great place to end. A final plug for Etihad Paper Mills, ladies and gentlemen. What a great wealth of knowledge with these two gentlemen.
Thank you. It's even better. خلاص, we covered everything.